Welcome everybody, and this is going to be the third last part of the series on playing with or against hanging pawns. And we're going to start with the game of Tigran Petrosian against Alexander Blyovsky. Obviously two very strong players, and we've already featured them in some other videos. c4, c5, b3, and Petrosian maybe tried to get a lot of his opponents out of theory, so he played systems with b3, trying to get eventually positions with hanging or isolated pawns, which he felt like he understood better than his opponents. And as we're seeing now, it's similar to his game against Hort. In fact, it's almost the same, but this time he's gonna put the bishop on d6, not on e7 like Hort did. And the reason he's checking first is because he's trying to put this bishop on a slightly awkward square and taking away the square from the knight. So he's checking first, and of course he does not want to trade because he has an isolated pawn, so he puts his bishop here on an active square. Knight d2 now, castles, castles, bishop c7, and once again he's going for this position with hanging pawns. Why is he doing that? Well, I guess he thought, okay, otherwise there's not much that can be done about the isolated pawn anyway, not with the knight on d2 and the knight on d4. It's hard to put pressure on it. And he wants to put pressure on the c pawn to be, and also get the potential control over the c5 square. So he goes for this here, and then queen c2, putting the queen on the c file, rook e8, bishop d4, queen d6, and then g3. So white's taking care more or less of the king's side, while at the same time he's gonna put a lot of pressure on the queen's side. Bishop g4. So he's voluntarily trading the bishops. I'm not sure if that's the best decision. Takes, takes, knight f3. And now, of course, there's not much of an attack anymore for black. Queen h6, queen f5, very important move. Trying to get the queen active and also not allowing black to do anything active because his queen is kind of in the way. So black is almost forced to trade, but now white happily trades and gets into this very nice endgame where he's able to put some pressure on this weakness. And now he played an interesting decision. He's trading the bishop for the knight, because he realizes that this bishop on c7 is not going to really be able to protect the c6 pawn. And the thing is, he cannot take with the pawn, that's the main idea, because then rook c1 is just going to win the pawn on c6. So since he cannot take with the pawn, he has to take with the bishop. After rook c1, rook c8, rook c5, white just has free pressure, and at any moment he can play knight d4 and trade the knight for the bishop. Whereas the bishop doesn't really have a lot of prospects anyway, and white has ideas like pressuring here, rook takes d5 is a threat, rook a5 is an idea. So black is in some trouble here already. Rook d6, rook c2, slowly but surely, and now he brings his king in the game, since it's already an endgame, and now he brings his knight over to try to get the knight to d3 and then b4, d4. Now the reason probably he first didn't do this is because after this, maybe he can do d4 and then d3 earlier, and the king is still not quite active enough that maybe black can create counterplay. So he first activated the king, and only then he goes for this. But here also he has this idea with f4, and after d3, rook d2. I'm not exactly even sure what the difference is, but I guess with the king on f1, all these tactics are always going to be in white's favor. I guess he saw bishop b2 and rook takes d3, but quite honestly, I don't see a big difference between the king on g1 and the king on f1, but I guess it doesn't really matter. So rook a8, takes, takes, and again, let's say he didn't go d4, didn't give up the pawn. Then, you know, like I said, the white has free pressure, knight d3, king e2, f4 is always an idea, and it's really just very hard to defend the position with all these weak dark squares. So black tries to therefore go for desperate counterplay, but of course, this just ends up being down a pawn, with really pretty much no compensation, and white converts the game with simple technique. So as you see, once again, these hanging pawns, if they're not able to be promoted and created counterplay with, they're just going to become a weakness. The next game I want to show you is the game between Anderssen and Ems. So similar thing. Knight f3, c5, c4, knight c6, d4, takes. And just the least theoretical idea, just e3. Simple move, just trying to get a structure where white's not playing for much, but just trying to get a game. And black decided to play bishop c5. White played bishop e2. Castles, and then d5. Takes. And again, we're getting an isolated pawn position. And now he went ahead and just took on c6. Why? Because otherwise black might just take on d4. So as we're seeing, a lot of times it's for concrete reasons that, we're going from isolated pawn position to hanging pawn position. And unlike the position with Razawayev, where black was able to get quickly bishop d6, h5, and remember the idea from the white side, here the bishop is a little bit misplaced and white has a couple of tempes compared to the other game. So here it's not as scary. White gets a chance to play b3, black plays bishop d6, and now white plays bishop 8 b2. And now, okay, he played rook e8, which is probably equalish. Well, h5 here we can just take. So again, we need to bring the rook in the game first. Rook c1, and now if he probably should have still played h5. Even though it's a couple of tempos down, maybe one tempo down, still it would have been interesting. After takes, rook e6, there's still going to be compensation. White's going to probably have to play g3 and there's still going to be pressure. But he didn't do that, and he played a more passive way. This game will be a good illustration of what happens if black does not play principled with the idea of h5 and does not try to attack but plays more positional. Then the weaknesses will let itself know. And bishop f3 happened. So already it's very difficult to play c5 because of this pawn right here. Rook c8, and now he just plays knight e2. Tries to get the knight to g3 and maybe d4, and just consolidating the king's side, and also putting pressure on the queen's side. I was also thinking maybe knight a4 would be possible. But maybe in that case black can play rook c8 and then get the h5 idea. So he's basically playing bishop f3 and taking care of all of black's ideas first. And even here, maybe black should play knight g4, knight g3, queen h4, and white can't play h3 because of knight takes f2, and then the tactics actually work in black's favor. Black wins a pawn, but white could take, queen d4, bishop e5, queen d2, and after bishop b8 the position is still dynamically equal because black does have two bishops as a compensation for the pawn structure. So it still was fine for black, but he played knight e4, and after knight g3 he decided to trade stuff off, but now this is not nearly as effective because black's now not having an attack, not having two bishops, and now white just has more or less free pressure on these hanging pawns. And as you'll see, when you don't try to create pressure, don't try to create counterplay, bad things will happen. Even here queen g5 was still interesting, but he played bishop e4, and after queen e2 takes, he took with the g-pawn, which is very strong, king g2 solidifying his king side, and as you'll see, the pressure is going to be free for black. So maybe black's exchanging pieces to try to get to a draw, but as a matter of fact, this position is highly unpleasant for black, because this pressure on the weak c6 pawn now, and d4 is never really help, it's just going to be good for white. And now black should play rook e6 to limit the damage, defending c6, but he played h6, and that turned out to be a mistake because after queen a6, now rook e6 loses the pawn because of the idea rook takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes c8, king h7, queen c7, and white's up a pawn. So, and very quickly the game falls apart. So as you guys see, even grandmasters very often misunderstand these kind of structures and even misunderstand some general things about this. It's not even like that they're missing some concrete calculation stuff. It's just like simply not understanding the needs of the position. So now he gets active, but at this point it's way too late. It's already desperation. And okay, he does not want to take on a7. That would be a bit greedy because after playing a move like d4, takes, and maybe rook e2, black's suddenly creating a lot of counterplay, which is unnecessary when we can just play queen f1, we're solid pawn up, and we eliminated every bit of black's counterplay. So queen takes f1 is going to be a lost endgame, so black played queen g4, queen d1, queen h3, and now queen f3, putting pressure on the d pawn, h5, rook c5, h4, desperation, but queen g2 simply, queen g4, gh, queen takes, rook takes d5, and now white won the second pawn, and there's still not enough play for black. So he tried desperately queen g4. Rook e6, by the way, would fail because of rook c8. I think you can even do this and then king f1, and then there's not enough activity, but maybe something else is even easier. But queen g4, king f1, g6, rook c7, rook f8, and this is of course completely winning for white. Queen h3, king e1, queen here, and black's left with some spite checks, and here they made the time control move 40 and black just resigned. So you see, black eventually tried to create counterplay, but only once it was completely already lost and complete desperation. But of course he should have tried to sense that earlier, that, you know, if you don't do something active, eventually you're going to be somewhat worse because of hanging pawns. One more game I wanted to look at in this video was a game between two less famous players, but also pretty good players. Kuvicha, a famous coach from Georgia, who's helping the Georgian Olympic team against Berlovich Alexander, a grandmaster. Well, it started like a Benoni, and white did not want to go into theory, so he just played e3. And once again, we're gonna get into this kind of structure. And here is another interesting idea. So white does not want to play here and keep this isolated pawn, because clearly black will just play d4 and then equalize at the very least. So white plays this idea with bishop takes c6. As you guys see, even a structure like this is also very interesting for white. And even here, white can create problems. Bishop g4, now this interesting move knight e2, with the idea that this is not so scary, because after gf, knight will come to g3, kingside will be protected, there are no real attackers, the bishop is unopposed, and then white will still have his pressure on the hanging pawns. And the hanging pawns are more or less immobile. The c5, d4 just is never in the cards here. So again, white's doing very well here. So after knight e2, he played bishop d6. And now maybe rook c1 was also interesting, but he played knight g3. Queen e7, rook c1, rook c8, and now rook c2, rook fd8, and now he played queen d3. I mean, there are other choices, but queen d3 looks like a very logical move, just preparing rook fc1, preparing maybe knight f5, and preparing queen takes a6. Black played knight e4, and here maybe it was more accurate to do this first. c5, takes queen c3, and try to play for a slight advantage like that. But he got a little bit greedy, he decided to go ambitious and take the pawn. And here black has compensation, and here black had chances to attack, but as you'll see, black has to also be very precise, otherwise he can also drift into a worse position. So c5 is okay, queen d3, queen e6, that's a very logical move where, you know, queen is prepared to shift to the king side and protecting these hanging pawns, even down a pawn. It still could be okay for black, especially that this pawn was weak anyway and black has potential on the a file. Takes, queen c3, and here black starts playing inaccurately. Here black of course should have played queen h6 and threatened both here, and well, if after the knight moves, maybe move the bishop back somewhere and threatening f6, and this would be pretty much unclear more or less. But he played f6, and after knight g5, a strong move, suddenly white's doing well again. Of course this cannot be taken because of queen takes g7, and after queen d5, white played takes, f3, and now black should probably play queen e6, takes, and c4 with some counterplay, but instead he played bishop e5, takes, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and now after rook d3, black is facing this unpleasant task of defending this worse endgame down a pawn, but because of opposite color bishops, they played a really long game, and with a lot of suffering, black was able to hold the draw. But Again, not without a lot of work. And the point is that, well, we probably don't have to go through the game too deeply, but the point is Black was suffering for a long time, and eventually, okay, Black held it. Black did a good job of holding it. Maybe White could have pressed a little bit better, and eventually White ended up not being able to win. But the point is that these hanging pawns allow both sides to come up with some interesting original ideas, original plans, and gives you guys chances to, outplay your opponents from either color. And as you already learned, isolated pawns can very often transpose into hanging pawns. So now you guys have a chance to practice positions with isolated pawns and hanging pawns and see how they connect with each other, and just try to improve on understanding all these different pawn structures, and hopefully you guys will also be able to play these kind of positions better than your opponents. And good luck to you guys trying to play with and against isolated and hanging pawns. And until next time, this was Grandmaster Alex Lenderman signing off. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching.